Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Here we go. Here we are. It is finally time to have an expansion episode. Word gets thrown around a lot here in the alternative football landscape. I think it's almost kind of become a crutch. Like we need to write about the UFL. We need to talk about the UFL. Like 12 teams. Expansion coming in 2025. But I do think we're actually at a decent spot right now to kind of take a pause, take a deep dive here and to see like what do we think relocation, expansion, anything else could look like in the UFL as we approach the presumed 2025 season. We have a lot of data here in terms of TV ratings, attendance. We have trademark kind of updates happening. The Dallas Stallions, anyone? But we have some stuff to actually look at today. So I think it's good to have a kind of a deep dive into all of this now. A little bit of speculation today, but it should be fun. If you enjoy the work that we are doing, please like and subscribe. Remember, we get up to 3,500 subscribers. You get a chance to win 2 free tickets to the UFL championship game. You can even sit with the professor, Andrew Murray himself, if you want. If you don't, if that's some, maybe that's holding people off. But like 40% of the people that watch our videos aren't subscribed, which is weird to me because like even if 5% of the 40 subscribed, then everybody would get a chance to win. So that would be cool. But a good episode today. If you want football talk, real gridiron football talk, Andy and I did that on Monday, second half of the live stream. I made sure that we did a deep preview into all the matchups this weekend, especially that last half because we were talking attendance and all that. So if you want the real football, Monday's on that. We're doing speculations and musings today on here. John Lewis of John Lewis Sports joining us. John has a great YouTube channel. I figured he would be down. I think we spent almost an hour here talking about hypothetical situations for the UFL in 2025. And then CFL talk with Dan Ralph of the Canadian Press, Hall of Fame reporter. Really appreciate Dan taking the time and John as well. With Dan, we talk about the Shawn Lemon, kind of is he retired? Is he suspended? What's going on with the gambling with the Alouettes and all of that? We talk Chad Kelly and the Argos. What are they going to do without a quarterback moving forward? We also get Dan's thoughts on some of the other CFL teams in the West. I plan on doing a lot more kind of deep dive here now. This has just been the last couple of weeks have just been crazy. So want to get, the Dave Campbells of the world and Tim Baines and, Steve Milton and kind of all that stuff to do some CFL team previews here. Kickoff here is June 6th. It's in like 4 weeks from today, I think. So we're certainly getting there. One note, Chad Kelly did release a statement today after Dan and I recorded. He is taking time away from the team during training camp. That's kind of what was dictated with the suspension and all of that. But Chad did put that out. So if you want to read that, I know it's on, I think, his Twitter and the Argos and all that, push that out. So please like and subscribe. Hope you enjoy. Fun episode today. Leave your comments. What do you think? What do you want to see with the UFL expansion here coming up potentially in 2025? And we'll see you at the end. Thanks. Well, here we are today. Finally, this is the long-anticipated expansion episode. We're trying to hold on because this is such the sugar rush. Okay, what do we have nothing to talk about. Let's talk about expansion. But I think that this is a good spot here. We have John Lewis here today, John Lewis Sports, great YouTube channel as well. I'm probably one of the only people that would do this deep dive with me. But we have the report of Friday night UFL games, potentially next spring. There's been some recent trademark activity related maybe to the Birmingham Stallions. So little things to talk about here. Andy and I kind of previewed the games for the weekend on the Monday recap. So if you want more football stuff, this is a little bit more evergreen speculation today, but talking, expansion, relocation, kind of who's on the chopping block here. John Lewis, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. We talked before the season about what is your optimism level? And I got to be honest, it's really higher now that we're getting closer to the postseason. So I think all's going good. We have some problems, but there's been a lot of positivity too.
I know I don't know what the deal was on the Monday show. Everyone's like, oh, you guys hate the Stallions. I'm like, we just heap praise at the Stallions for 45 minutes. But, there is a question there, and that'll be one of the first cities we tackle here because, the protective stadium lease is going to be up. We've gone to 3 years there. We'll get into that. First off, just pour one out here. RIP the XFL 2020 Vipers. Sure, I did see this because I'm notified if, I don't know, I get these. Some time ago, I set up email notifications. So the original V, the Tampa Bay Vipers and the Cobra face there. I don't think that relates to do with, the Vegas Vipers. They don't want to do anything like that because that was a different V. But But John, are you sad to see the RIP 2020 Tampa Bay Vipers?
Yeah, it's such a legacy they left behind, and then becoming the Las Vegas Vipers. I don't know that anyone is going to really miss that. Yeah, the 2020 Vipers, with probably one of the worst color combinations that the XFL could have thought of. But maybe good riddance to that one.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about like some of the attendances now, and I'll include some of the XFL franchises in there. But you look back at like when the Guardians were drawn or what the Vipers were drawn, even the Wildcats. I mean, it like it puts it all in context here, kind of all of that stuff. So we had the report coming out, the Friday night football games, potentially here next year. I know Mike Mitchell's talked about, adding teams. I'm at the point where going into, if there is a 2025 season, you need to either have one or both of moving a team or adding teams just to have it feel like there's some sort of excitement and growth. The USFL kind of tried to do that with the hub things going from year 1 to 2. Are you of similar ilk? Do you think we could just roll 8 out next year? Kind of where do you think just generally about expansion and relocation?
I think you could roll 8 out. I think, to your point, I think it is a better sign of success if you, and you're fiscally responsible about it, to roll out at least 2 more teams, just to show like there's some kind of growth. I mean, and it's not just that you're passing along to your fan base or even to the casual fans who we talk a lot about, that I think this league really needs to continue to bring in. But I think it is something that adds to the product on the field. And I don't think it waters down anything. There was a lot of talk about how consolidating these 2 leagues together was going to make this extremely better play. I mean, we've got, how many 1-6 teams right now? So it's not, that wasn't necessarily the case. So I don't think you're going to water anything down by adding 2 more teams and, 100 more jobs out there, 100 more players.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of football is good. And I know Mike's been talking a lot about that. We talk in our group chat kind of over the weekends. It doesn't feel like super teams, though. It is weird. And I do kind of worry about that. Like you said, you could add the 2. Like, I don't know. I mean, do you have to go to Skip Holtz and say, you got to let go of Matt Corral? Like, we got to have another quarterback here? Because, but you add these, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's been super teams this year. I think the quality of play has been the best we've seen since probably 2020. Where do you land on that?
Yeah, now I will say there, with the Renegades, that is a 1-6 team that doesn't feel like a 1-6 team if you watch them play. The other, 1-6 is unfortunately, for Memphis, and Houston, those are 2 teams that just don't look good on the field. But yeah, I mean, I thought, there was going to be, for the season, I went on a fool's errand and try to predict, who the final records of these teams. I still, I didn't think that Birmingham and St. Louis were going to be the 2 teams that were right up there. But it did feel like this is a little bit of bottom heavy league, maybe.
It is, yeah. There's quite, and now, especially kind of like doing the episode today, like some of this stuff is kind of locked away. We know the USFL stuff. I think the XFL will be pretty locked up here coming up. Yeah. I know you can still play for home field, right? If Michigan wins out, then you can kind of do that. But for the most part, I think that they're going to have that all. So, in terms of I think you tend to be a little bit more optimistic when it comes to the USFL stuff. What have you made of kind of the attendance woes? I think Arlington has kind of been a glaring spot as well on the XFL side, but where do you land on that? And then we'll kind of roll that into what we should do with these cities.
You said something before the Birmingham St. Louis game that I completely agreed with. If you don't get 16,000 people in there at Protective Stadium when AJ McCarron's coming to town with the St. Louis Battlehawks, then there might be a problem. And it was only 14,000. So I think there are a lot of people in Birmingham that are diehards who expected a lot more, and they're kind of disappointed that the rest of the community hasn't, caught on. And that's too bad, because it's a very good team. They are fun to watch. Now, they're obviously fun to watch on television, because when you start to look at the market rankings, you've got Birmingham up there, you have St. Louis up there. Interesting enough, Louisville, Kentucky, where I am, maybe I'm helping the ratings somehow, but it's top 10. So these are all teams that are fun to. Detroit's in there too. These are teams that are fun to watch. But as far as attendance goes, I ride kind of the fence on this, because we understand that the financials are not necessarily based on ticket sales, but also when you're putting on a TV product, you wouldn't watch a concert that there was nobody in the stands. So you would think like, well, this act is no good. So I think that there is there's a dichotomy there that we have to kind of come to grips with. And when I start to see 14,000 for the biggest game of the year, that I take pause in that for sure.
And I mean, the TV ratings came out. It carried the weekend. It was the highest viewed one, and it was on Fox. But 750,000. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, that's going to be a million." St. Louis is a big market, and there's a weird, especially with Birmingham. St. Louis is in that too. Some of these markets, but there's this weird the team, like you living there, like the city is part of, it's kind of like the CFL, right? Where like the people in Canada really take pride in like, we are Canadian, like this. It's like the Birmingham people. It's no disrespect on the city of Birmingham or the team or how it's standing there playing. It's purely, the number of people. When Seattle didn't show up, and I was the first one to admit that when Seattle didn't show up for the 2020 Sea Dragons, it's like, I didn't take personal like injury that like, oh, they're criticizing the Seattle crowd. Like, it is what it is, right? And especially now, you've been there 3 years. I think the hub has worn people out there. I think that they have other stuff to do. I think you've lost the novelty of it, except for the diehards. I'll always be surprised how the damage that hub did the first 2 seasons there for the Stallions, and I think just saturating and just burning people out. I think anyone that was going to go kind of went.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And it doesn't even have to be a good team or a bad team. I don't want to I'm very reluctant to compare the UFL to like minor league baseball. But when a lot of people go to a minor league baseball game, they don't necessarily go for the team. They go for the experience. They go for the other things that might be happening. They go for the giveaways. And I think that was what is really lacking Now, I really enjoyed my time in Birmingham in 2022 when I went down there, because it was 2 games a day. The parking situation was great and all that. And I got, sit around and drink some cold beers or whatever and watch a couple of football games. And it's very accessible. The only problem is there was almost nothing surrounding any of these games. It was kind of like that in Canton. There was nothing happening between, the Saturday game and the Sunday game. There was nothing really on site. So I think there has to be a little bit more experience. And I do wonder if that's starting to hurt some of these teams. They go like, well, it doesn't really matter about the product on the field if you're a casual fan. We're just going to go like, hey, let's spend a few hours and watch some football. But if you've got kids or even, you're just there, you want something else to do before and maybe after the game. And I don't know that a lot of these venues are providing that, and they're not providing a lot of giveaways. Now, they have recently, but giveaways including not just tickets, but you need to give away some merchandise, and maybe that'll help boost it a little bit. And that brings more people in, and maybe more people watch the product on the field, and then they say, yeah, this is something that I'm interested in and would come back to.
It's so funny. And the last thing about this, and I want to get into, even my wife last night, we were watching the Mariners game on, and we had been, they're on the homestand, and we had went Friday and then Sunday for Mother's Day. We were watching the game last night, and it was colder here Monday night, like very sparse crowd. And even Dorothy walks downstairs and she's like, oh, wow, like there's really not a lot of people at the Mariner game tonight. I'm like, this is someone that's like, so it's these people, and I respect the Emery Hunts of the world. Like, well, who watches for who looks for the stands and who watches for it's just a casual thing. You turn it on, like, wow, people are invested in this. You turn on the game on Sunday, and we had 42,000 people or whatever there. You go, wow, look how beautiful it is. Look at this. Like, it just adds to the whole ambiance. Even if you're not watching the game for that, it just adds to it. It really took me back of that, even where she's like, wow, like that's remarkable. There's not a lot of people there.
It's a TV program, with the UFL, and that's part of the set. The people in the background, the fans, and they add something to it. As you said, an ambiance, you hear cheering, you hear booing. When you don't hear that, and it's an empty stadium, that was always the knock on the USFL, was a problem with these empty stadiums and these hubs. It was like, it was not appealing for a lot of people to watch.
Last thing here, I want to make sure, any thoughts on this? So, because part of we had this Deadline Hollywood coming out talking about this, and I wish here I can pause that GIF because that is giving me a headache. Adding the Friday night games, I think, leads credence in our conversation today about, adding 2 teams. Mike Mitchell had said it was very much going to be the 2 teams, and Canton was very much in play, or Ohio. What is your thought process the same here, that it would really be hard to move, 2 of the games from Saturday, or a game from Saturday? Like, this would help add I guess TV, shelf, whatever, for advertisers and stuff, add more slots for them to do that. Are you under the same feeling?
Yeah, I think so. And that, Fox has really leaned into live sports programming over the past 5+ years. Again, SmackDown was on Friday nights. They go into, college football and college basketball on Saturdays and Sundays. And it seems to me like this is another opportunity outside of college football or basketball where you have a time where you can put on the UFL. Yeah, you're right. With the cadence of if you didn't add a team or two teams, the cadence of one game on Friday night, then are you only going to have one game on Sunday and two games on Saturday or whatever? So to me, this feels like there is a lot of talk behind the scenes, which I'm sure there is, that we need to add at least two more teams to add that extra game. And that gives, some availability there for Fox to sell and make it a thing, make it a Friday night thing. I think, personally, I thought it'd be great to have either a Thursday night or a Monday night game, but Friday night makes sense for a lot of reasons. You could do a Friday night game and then maybe do two early games Saturday or Sunday, whatever you want to do with that. But you have that cadence of 3 straight days of the UFL and more opportunity for people to jump in. And yes, so to me, when I saw this from Deadline Hollywood, it seemed like, okay, unless they're really going to fundamentally only put, change things and only put one game on a Saturday or Sunday, it feels like there have to be at least two more teams in play for 2025.
Yeah, and to me, it shows investment, right? It shows
Yeah.
investment in Fox, and we're giving the spot to that. The college stuff and everything they have, and I know we talked part about this on the Monday, but just more thoughts here as we sit later in the week. But I know what are these networks putting on this time of year? I think that's
Right.
a good spot for that. It keeps the whole like live sports. WWE's really done a remarkable job over the last decade or so of marketing themselves more as a sports product, even though it is scripted, and they're able to call in more advertising dollars for that. And I think keeping that, and hey, if you like sports on Friday, even if it's not wrestling, here's something else kind of action packed, and yeah, put some branding behind it. CFL does a great job with that, and the Friday Night Football in Canada. I know a lot of the CFL listeners on our show kind of wrote in about that and said, yeah, we like that, and this is kind of what we do. Any other thoughts on that, or else let's get to kind of the 8. I think we'll go kind of rough shot through the 8 cities we have, and then we can see if we want to do any expansion as well. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, but just kind of sum it up. We talked about how Fox is starting to lean in on live programming. I think a lot of networks will too. So if CBS and NBC start to get involved, I mean, you look at Fox's schedule right now. I think you have it's all either reality shows or game shows, and that's what almost every network is doing. Very few scripted shows. And what are some of the things that are cheaper to produce than a scripted show? It's news and it's sports. And I think that's where Fox has really started to lean in and get away from some of the scripted shows and then move into this and then make that initial extra investment in the UFL. And I think that is a good sign. I think we are definitely going to have a 2025 season, and it really feels like there's going to be at least 10 teams in this league.
Yeah, and also I think I know we're still kind of in the wake of the writer's strike, but like that was part of it, and now have the networks, like you said, we're like, hey, let's focus more on then we don't even need to worry about these stupid union writers and all of that. Not that but like
Right.
but I think that that's what happens, right? When you put yourself in the situation of we're gonna go on a strike or we're gonna do whatever. Okay, well then people find alternative sources or ways to kind of do all that stuff. So a lot of talk, and I know on the Monday as well, we had a lot of talk about the Stallions here and everything else. The protective stadium lease has been good, right? Successful with the hub and kind of all of that stuff. Is that worth investing, continuing to invest in the Birmingham? We have a trademark here I want to get to involving the Stallions, but just overall thoughts. I think it's been worthwhile for the 3 years. Is it worthwhile to double down on that moving forward in Birmingham?
I think so. I don't think you're throwing, good money after bad, because it has been an investment. You're still getting, 14, to 16,000 people, 14, 15, 16,000 people. And I think by UFL standards, as we know, that's pretty good. If you continue to build, and, I went into this season, I have a little different mindset than I did before the season started, because it was such a clunky rollout. And, you and I have talked about that a lot. You've talked about that with a lot of people. It's a clunky rollout on a lot of different things. But the more I thought about it and the more I've seen this season progress, we know that they were trying to just get this out and trying to get this product on the field. It was almost like a proof of performance thing. Here's the concept here. This is what we're trying to do. And I think if you're getting 14,000 people on kind of a shaky rollout here in Birmingham, yeah, I think it's worth it. Now I know we're going to talk about this, but I think there are some other places where they've got some big decisions to make. But I think to me, it's worth it in Birmingham.
So here, and Mike Mitchell had sent this over as well, and he's like, "Well," because I was posting about the Vipers, like, "Well, if you really want to make people go crazy," I'm like, "Well, maybe we'll talk about this on
Way
here."
to go, Mike.
But Dallas Stallions. So this was filed back in April 2023. Okay, whatever. But they just filed an extension here of April, so a little less than a month ago here to extend that out. Because here's my crazy idea. This is my crazy whatever tinfoil hat here. We'll talk Arlington. Arlington's been lackluster. What if you keep an Arlington team, have it be the Dallas Stallions, move the Stallions there, and you still have the hub in Arlington?
Oh, I hate everything about that. I hate everything about that. That is just, I mean, that's up there with, let's call the Houston Gamblers the Roughnecks and move them to Rice Stadium. I mean, that is just too much fumbling the ball there.
But you're keeping the hub presence in Arlington. It's the same team. You're just really, so you wouldn't touch the Stallions at all. What do you make of this? The Dallas Stallions trademark?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what to make of this unless this was some kind of insurance policy that if they couldn't or Birmingham didn't want to come through, that they have this. I don't understand that. This is well beyond my business comprehension, and this is very much above my sports comprehension, because I can't imagine why the USFL would want, if you did move the Stallions, why would you would want to continue to call them the Stallions? It just, I know that Eric Shanks and the USFL and what they wanted to do was really play on this nostalgia, and this was a personal project for Eric Shanks of Fox. But this seems like it would be personal to try to keep the Stallions brand alive, and I just think Birmingham has always been the place, the home city, the capital of all kinds of alt football, which Scott Adamson does a great job of, covering, and he wrote a great book about it, because there's been every spring football team seems to has had a team in Birmingham. But it's beyond me. This just seems like would be such a bad move on many, many levels.
So we know we have the Mobile Stallions trademark, and that was filed back when they were doing the Birmingham stuff. And I don't know if they were just worried about kind of, it still could call it, kind of be in the area or whatever, right? Because it's not that far, right? Mobile to Birmingham.
Now that I don't know.
Oh, well, come on.
I mean, I've been to Birmingham, but I haven't been to Mobile.
It looks like it's about 3 hours, so 3.5 hours. So yeah, but I remember when that was coming out, there was all of that. And okay, this is why we're keeping all that. But I don't know. It's interesting to me, this Dallas Stallions thing. Yeah, you have a little placeholder there, and again, it's cheap and it's easy to file trademarks. And I had a trademark for the National String Football League and all that stuff, and more expensive for me than it would be for Fox and USFL here. Which it is interesting that these are still under the USFL Enterprises, right? Even though now it's supposedly this Fox Redbird kind of indenture endeavor there. But I don't know. I could just, I guess, so then reflecting on that, the Arlington Renegades, I know that's the home of the XFL. You wouldn't know that by walking around Choctaw Stadium. You wouldn't know that by talking with a lot of the Arlington Renegades, maybe, audience walking around, people on the street. You have to keep a presence there. What do you do? Just double down and hope for more? I mean, I don't think you can pull the Arlington Renegades unless you have a different thought.
No, I don't think you can. I mean, if you're going to continue to keep that model there, but to just change the name to what good does that do? Like, just to change the name of the Stallions or the Renegades. I mean, they did go from Dallas to Arlington, whatever that means. But yeah, I don't get that one.
Have you been surprised? I have been, and I know the team now is terrible. I'm going to be at the game here in a couple weeks. I'm like, oh, this will be I bought this like months ago. This will be a fun game to go to, the Battlehawks and the Renegades, but we'll be there. I mean, the team's terrible. It's really hard now. It's kind of like the Edmonton Elks in the CFL, where it's really hard to kind of market these teams. It's hard to get people out to the games when the team stinks. But are you surprised with kind of it feels like apathy for the Renegades? It just never feels, even last year for the kickoff, it just I don't know. It just doesn't feel like there's a real fervor there.
Yeah, I mean, they've got, the Renegades have that, they've got the diehard fans. I know how much you love to talk about the beer snake, but it almost seems like the apathy it's showing up on the field. They seem checked out, and I don't understand why. I mean, you it seemed like there was a really good now I understand Abram Smith, got hurt for the year and all that, but that should not make the team as bad as it is. And I don't know if, what happened last year, if it was, they just, they got hot and continued to be hot and the schedule laid out for them. But yeah, I mean, I've got friends around the DC area, and I don't think that a lot of them, even realize about, the defenders or what they are. I mean, and there are people, I've run into this. Friends of mine, I worked in the sports industry, TV sports, for 30 years. I got friends of mine in the sports industry who have been in it for as long as I was or longer, and they still get the USFL and XFL and UFL confused. And these are people who follow sports every day. So there's got to be a better marketing effort, I think, overall, but certainly in these communities to get people out. Yeah, it just seems like, the DC, what was it, 12,000 people they said showed up for that game. And hey, I don't know.
So, all right. So going through here, so Birmingham, you said you feel like is untouchable. Yeah. Arlington, you need to have a presence there. I don't know if you get rid of Stoops here at the end of the year. Can you kind of revamp in there? I'm worried. I'm worried about the Renegades kind of here because if Perez ages out, I don't know. It's just been, like I said, I've said apathy before, but it just feels like that. It just feels like they can't get if the hub wasn't there, if they didn't have the deal with Choctaw. I don't know if you would keep the Renegades there moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think Stoops might just walk himself out of there. I don't know that how interested he is in this whole thing, especially the way the pay structure is going to be for coaches next year. Is it going to be worth it to him? As far as Perez, he ages out, but when you look at the stats, man, he's, you can't blame any of this on Luis Perez right now. So, I would hope that they would keep some kind of something there, especially if it's going to continue to be the hub, because it seems to make sense. I wouldn't say it's untouchable, though. I mean, I'm reluctant to say Birmingham's untouchable, but I think they are. Arlington, it seems like that's a place that you've got to continue to keep this thing going unless they have a better business plan right now. It's like firing a coach. It's like, when you're talking about moving a team or moving a hub or whatever, you better have an upgrade. And I just wonder if they have an upgrade in mind.
I do think we're going to see some big coaching changes here coming in, going from this season to next 100%. Season. I think Stoops is from just my feeling, I would think Stoops is gone. I can't imagine Wade Phillips rides up this again if the pay structure drops down. We talked about that before on here. I mean, he's so tied into that brand, and it's not even worth talking about like relocating the Battlehawks, but him staying involved. What is your sense of that? It feels like he's pretty invested long term, but there's always going to be lots more opportunities for someone like him now going through all this. Just a side note here to kind of veer off.
No, I think you're right. He is so connected with that St. Louis brand and what he has done for that community. But you do have to wonder, when he has the success on the level that he has had, with St. Louis, if an NFL team comes calling for, for not a position coach, but for maybe some kind of coordinator position, or maybe even a front office, that you would think that that's something that he would have to look at. I mean, I hope for the UFL's sake, I hope for St. Louis's sake, things don't change there very much. I don't know if AJ McCarron's going to come back. That could change a lot of things too. So, but yeah, I think there's going to be some coaching changes. I can't imagine that. Houston they've got to make a change. So there are going to be a few.
I think DC, we've touched on DC. Less enthusiasm right now in the stands or out of the field. I know that Mike had the paid attendance here for the weekend. Certainly looked less of that in the stands, but that feels like about as strong of a market as you can have right now. Building back all the way to 2018 through 2020. I know the play on the field hasn't been as great this year, and I think that's probably part of it. Any other thoughts on kind of DC? Because I want to get to Houston.
Yeah, I think there is maybe a little bit of apathy, and it's starting to come down because the play is not great, and there are some very knowledgeable football fans in that market. But to me, when you start comparatively speaking about as far as in fan engagement and fan attendance, I mean, it's still up there. So it just seems to me like that's something that they can build on. And going back to my point, I feel like they were just trying to do a lot of different things and trying to get this league going. Maybe what they've learned in a year, they can build it up and maybe another step.
the Defenders have been lucky that the Commanders, the football team, the Redskins, whatever you want to call it, have not been great kind of through this whole, because it's been a long, I mean, they really lucked out, right? Because I think, and we'll talk with Michigan, I think you've seen, the Lions now, and my God, we're paying Jared Goff, Kings Ramsey.
Right.
Hey, good for you, man. Get your
Yeah.
bag. But you're seeing some of these markets, even, Seattle and with the XFL coming in, and then we have the Kraken and the Sounders are more popular. You lose. There's certain times where obviously St. Louis hit that situation hasn't changed, right? With the NFL, but I think DC has been really lucky that the Commanders have not been great. Now, hey, maybe Jane Daniels comes in and sets the world on fire, and then, hey, I'm going to watch this versus kind of the Defenders, but they've really been lucky thus far that Washington's kind of wallowed in the football market here the last 4 seasons. And, a lot of the enthusiasm for the Defenders was, we hate Dan Snyder, and now that's all out. But I'll be curious if that continues, if they're continuing to retain any of that, or now if people are willing to go back to the NFL franchise.
Yeah, I mean that's the dynamic in St. Louis by far. That's the reason they have 30,000. When I was at the game earlier this year against Memphis, there was a guy there who was dressed like Stan Kroenke. There's still people holding up signs about Stan Kroenke, who moved the Rams to LA. So there is that dynamic. I think you're exactly right. DC had gone down so far in the NFL. This team comes in and just starts setting it on fire in the regular season, and goes all the way to the championship. Or were they in the championship? I got to think.
DC's championship.
We had Arlington won.
DC, yes.
Against DC. Okay, yeah. When you turn 50, these things happen.
It's okay. I have a lot of different football leagues.
But yeah, they made such, had that weird loss against Orlando was their only loss, and then they went to the championship game. So I think you're right about that. That's why I say, I know there are so many thousands of factors at work, but it just seems to me like San Diego would be a great place because they've been jilted. They love football there. Wouldn't that be a great place to put a West Coast team?
Yeah, we'll touch on that, because that's the deep conversation I want to have here with all of that. So talking Houston now, I'm just kind of trying to kind of roughly alphabetically through this. I don't know what you do with Houston now. I think Houston's been so mismanaged in terms of just, the coaching, and then that screwed up the Brahmas as well. And obviously they're better because of it. But the domino effects of trying to keep and placate the USFL side with the Houston, roughneck gamblers, whatever, however you want to refer to it, I don't know how you come back from that. I've seen people complain about Rice Stadium, and that's part of it too, but it's this whole mishmash. I mean, do you pull the plug on that? They have other, they have other Texas trademarks here. We'll kind of go through some of these, the Austin Outlaws, the Austin Gamblers, the Austin Running. I don't know what you do at this point to rectify the situation.
I don't know that you can. I mean, I really don't. That's one of the way that's been handled. What does the UFL do as a league to say, okay, yeah, we kind of fumbled this and this was messed up and we shouldn't have done this and shouldn't have done that. But how do you, like you said, how do you come back from that? I can't think of a good plan where you say, okay, well, where Rice Stadium didn't work, so where are you going to play now? They already had so many, problems trying to find a place to play in the first place. To me, I think if you pulled the plug on Houston, there would be a few heartbroken fans for sure, but I don't think overall that the entire league or, even the casual fans are going to say, what happened to the Houston Roughnecks / Gamblers? So I don't know that the value is there for this league, for this team in this league.
Except for just the hub sense of it, right? And that's really the reason why we have the 3 Texas teams to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what value. It could have been tremendous value. I just don't know what value it has anymore. I think if any of the teams thus far, I think Houston at least has to be, drawing 6,700 people, whatever there, it's just not going to cut it. I mean, that's it's just so sad because we have a lot of people in the Phillips of the world that have been fans of the show forever, and they sit there and we love this brand, but I get a lot of people that are still that are upset, and it's weird because I really predicted this, and everyone was like, no, nobody cares, they're fans. I'm like, no, you can't just put, like you said, you can't just take the Birmingham Stallions. Hey, they're the Dallas Stallions now. Aren't you going to still be a fan? It's right. The same. It's the same. and I don't know, like back in the USFL in the 80s, like how that worked. If you were fans, if I've never lived through having my team, I know, well, I guess we had the Sonics leave, right? And now it's been long enough that if we had a new team here, people would embrace that. But like certainly Sonics fans that felt scorned by the Sonics leaving, Seattle fans, they weren't fans of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like that was the opposite of what you wanted to be. You hated the Thunder because they were the ones that took your team away. I don't think you gain, the relocation of that. I don't think you retain the fans from your original city and then gain the fans that you're moving into.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to go back and ask some of those fans who were Breakers fans back in the original USFL. Well, they had like 3 different cities before the whole thing collapsed. So, yeah, I don't know that followed. Apparently they thought that brand was good enough, but I don't know that those teams would follow those other teams. So, yeah, you're right. There weren't many. I don't think there were too many Cleveland Browns fans that became Baltimore Ravens fans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a weird. And we have this all the time, like, oh, do we need to go back to here? Or should you go back here? And part of all this conversation with all that, like, I think Seattle's burned. Like, I think some of these cities you do get burned. I mean, shoot, they're in San Antonio, and we'll talk about them. But you still hear like San Antonio's burned in the city. The darn teams in the city right now. They're like, well, we don't want to go because we're too upset about stuff in the past. Like they have a team. Like I don't think I think you lose. You like I said before, you don't retain. You're not adding through relocation. You're kind of slicing off and then moving on. But yeah, I think Houston for sure should be on the shopping block. Anything else on that? We can talk through. What would it be? Memphis would be next.
Yeah, I mean, Fox themselves put a lot of money into Liberty Bowl, so they might want to roll the dice one more time with Memphis. Maybe, I mean, I think there's going to have to be some retooling there. I was really pulling for John DeFilippo to do something with that team, and Case Cookus, that they just seem like 2 of the best guys, in the league, but. I think with the monetary investment that Fox has put into the Liberty Bowl to do some different things there that they did it a couple of years ago, maybe they roll the dice on that, but they got to figure that out. Yeah, I agree. On the surface, yeah, you could pull the plug and you could say, well, they didn't provide any value either, but I think it might be a little bit more value for Fox. We'll see.
Except for that, and except for the FedEx guy that they say wants to buy the team there, and I mean, I guess, right? I mean,
what are you buying?
Well, that's been my point all along, and this goes back to the attendance thing. And people get mad at me all the time because like the gate doesn't matter. Like, but then, yeah, what are you buying then? You're buying partial ownership of some trademarks from back in the day, and you get a 10% stake of merch from the UFL.com. I mean, I don't know what being a franchise owner in this league, and maybe that's a deep dive for another day. Like, I don't even know what being a franchise owner would look like here. You still have to, I mean, I would imagine that Redbird, and then from what I hear, Fox then would still kind of have to, sign off on everything. It's not like you're running your own marketing plans and everything or running your own deals.
Well, and hopefully that's been the talk for a while now behind the scenes. Like, what do we do to make this happen? That was always the USFL's plan. Well, they were going to try to relocate those teams, I think, in 5 years or something like that. Well, then there was the merger, so that probably reset the clock on that. So hopefully there's some talk and some, real talk behind the scenes of here's how this league will improve next year, and here's why you should invest. So, maybe there will be, 2 or 3 that step up.
There's always been this, and Mike's reported this, and I don't question Mike, but I question the kind of the people saying, providing this information. They're like, always, well, all these USFL, these were all set up long term because we had ownership. We knew who we wanted in each. And I remember back, what was it with the Generals? And was it A-Rod or someone that Jeter wasn't like Jeter wanted to own part of the team, or they wanted Jeter involved?
Seems like Jeter. I think it was. Yeah, I think it seems like it was. It was someone. It was a former Yankee or someone that was going to be involved and be a part owner of the Generals, right?
But I just don't like. This is, like. We've talked about this before in here, but like the way we've got these cities now, right now at 8 is 18 steps of telephone through the world, right? If it was this is why we were going to do these, and this is why the XFL, and then we had to do this, and we had to do this, and we had to do this, and we had to do this. And like, I don't believe any of these, save for supposedly this legendary Memphis, the FedEx guy. I don't think any of these do, but I can't imagine at this point he's even invested. He's like, shoot, man, it's been 3, we did the hub, we were doing this year. Like, I think Yeah, especially when you're looking at the stadium every week. There's no surprise. It's not like, oh, well, actually, there's all these people invested. Like you can see the local investment on the field every week. I mean, it's not hidden.
No, you're right. It's very public. You do have to wonder if this team had been better, if there would have been a better turnout. I think that might have been a market to me, that if that had been a good team, that maybe you would have had a better turnout and it would look a lot better on television. I don't know. And maybe it draw some investors. I have to think that everybody behind the scenes, combined as the UFL, have some kind of plan in place, because, if expansion did happen, Andy brought up a good point. If expansion happened, this would be the first time it really happened in spring football in recent memory. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember the original XFL. A month after the XFL started, it was like March of 2001. They were visiting cities to talk about they were and open about it. They were visiting cities to talk about the expansion of the original XFL, and they'd gone to DC and Portland and I think Pittsburgh and some other places. So you always have to keep that in mind, because you have to grow the product. And back to your original question, when we first started, it has to show some kind of growth, and I think you got to have at least 2 more teams. But then you also have a few that you're going to have to say, well, we got to do something with this. Either fundamentally change them, or maybe move them somewhere else, but you're still going to have to add teams one way or another.
I think you give too much credit. Like there's the plan. Like, oh, they got this plan here.
You might be right.
And I mean, like we were used to work in news, and I remember all the time, and there's media bias 100%, right? You watch CNN or Fox or kind of any of this stuff, but I remember back at like the local Fox level of people, oh, like you didn't go to this, like, because you guys are biased. It's like, no, maybe Sherry was just in the bathroom and missed the phone call, and then we just totally missed the story. Like maybe there's no or it's like, people were, you read into a lot of this stuff, or like, oh, Reed's covering, or Reed didn't do this, or repost it. It's like, maybe it's like I was in the bathroom and saw this and thought it was funny and had a typo and deleted it. Or like, I don't know, like there's not always some grand conspiracy here with all this stuff.
You're right about that. I every time I hear about that, when, working in local TV, as long as I did, people would say, well, same thing. Well, you guys didn't cover this because you're biased against us or whatever. And I'd be like, if you think that we're organized enough to get a conspiracy together, let you sit in on a news meeting that happens at 9:00 in the morning, where everyone starts talking in circles, trying to figure out what they're going to do that day, much less trying to plan out some vast conspiracy to not cover your event. So yeah, you may be right, but I think that might be some cautious optimism on my part, and maybe just wishful thinking that there is a plan behind the scenes.
Memphis, to me, I like the brand, good, strong brand. I think they've done questionable stuff with some of the uniform, and the people are kind of bad about that. Michigan, the other one here with the Panthers, a lot of history there. You got the Ford Field, people, can they play it? I think there's the college they were training at during the hub and kind of all that stuff. Like, I don't know what you do. It's both of these in like literally. So every week when I post the things on like Sports Illustrated or whatever, I got to tag all the cities, and I'm trying to go through alphabetically. And I always forget the M's, because it's like, okay, we got Arlington and Birmingham. Because to me, they're both really forgettable. I know Memphis is second in the USFL conference right now. To me, all these really kind of boring games, boring teams, but to me, Michigan is in the same point as Memphis. I doesn't feel like there's a strong outpouring of support there for Ford Field.
No, I mean, the numbers reflect that. And it's I think it was an average of 7,400 people or so in the 4 home games that they've had. And despite that, they're still 3-1 at home and not having a home field advantage. And they're a good team. And I kept saying, like, I've heard so many excuses about, I know that the ticket sales came late. Understand that. Then people were saying, well, there were 3 straight home games and we could, well, to me, that was 3 straight opportunities for someone to attend one game. There was just so many excuses on why that is not working there. But I think you hit on one of the big reasons it's not an excuse. It's because the Detroit Lions are very good, and they're starting to really catch the fan base. And I don't know that the appetite is that big for another team in Detroit. That's why I did a YouTube video and caught some heat from some people and got some agreements from others about there is a problem in Michigan, and it's with Ford Field. And there are a lot of people that said we can keep the Michigan name, but you got to move this team somewhere else because again, that's to me throwing good money after bad. Is if you are trying to get this lease on Ford Field and you keep seeing the attendance drop, in a, what was it, 65,000 seat stadium or whatever it is. And you're
It's
getting
massive. Yeah.
7,400 people. It's just that doesn't make sense to me. And it's a good team. Obviously, they're going to the USFL championship game.
The conference, whatever. To me, and part of it too is the way that this all goes back to how this league handles its media relationships, right? And we've seen that. I don't know if you've tracked all of this, like the Birmingham, there's like this like the controversy with the Birmingham stuff and all of that, but like the league, in my opinion, doesn't always do the best, right? Okay, we don't know how to work with the non-traditional media, right? And thank God that this is no personal complaints, but just like this is I've seen other podcasts and read other things, and like so we have a question about that. But then we're also not sexy enough nor doing enough to attract the big name media. And I think you see this in Detroit, right? If I'm a writer in Detroit and I know like the Bill Shays of the world and Tony, what's his face he's been on the show. Sorry, I forget his last name.
Tony what's his face? Sure.
Tony, was it Tony Paul or whatever? They came with the first game there. Oh, this is a novelty. Let's go check it out, whatever. But like that wears off, right? And like we have meal vouchers in Arlington for the media there. Like that doesn't help. I don't know how the Detroit, I don't have someone sitting in the Detroit press box every week to ask him about that. But like you don't want to deal with the non-traditional media, but then the traditional media think you're too small time, right? Like I'm not coming to season 2, week 7 of the Michigan Panthers. So then, I don't know how you continue to grow in that market. Memphis is a little bit better because it's not as big, right? Michigan's got a lot of other sports stuff going on, like you said with the Lions, and they've been having the draft stuff. I mean, even though the draft was, that was a month going into that was all that, hey, we're covering, this is going to be set up for this, we're doing that. Like, that's an issue to me. Some of these markets where like we don't, like, what is the game plan in Michigan? Like, I don't know how you do build that out because you don't have anybody there thoroughly covering the league. I think in dwindling numbers that kind of traditional media are. I just don't know who's covering that league there anymore.
And Reed, as you know, when you work in local television, which is, even as local television is, it's not what it once was, but it's still it's still a big avenue to get the word out. And a lot of people still consume, local TV news. But when you start especially a market like Detroit, and especially in the environment that news is now, you don't have the manpower you used to have. So if someone's going to decide, well, are we going to cover A or we can cover B, and B ends up being the Michigan Panthers, and A ends up being something that is of more local interest or something bigger, they're always going to choose A. And, I feel for some of the, I guess, sports information directors, some of the, the guys who are, behind the scenes, the PR guys for these teams, because what's the answer? It's like, you're trying to appeal, to these, traditional media. But the problem is, you got to wonder, is it from on high, or are these people sitting in their own fiefdoms of PR saying, well, we're not going to deal with John and we're not going to deal with Reed because, we don't ever see their stuff. We're trying to, get the attention of the local market. There's a happy medium in there somewhere. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I just searched Michigan Panthers here in news. I mean, you have a Detroit News article from yesterday, a Detroit Free Press article from 2 days ago, and then there's like a million sporting news, like whatever this website is, and then the Detroit Free Press article from a month ago. So it's not like, and we talk, it's another conversation too about the offseason, like how does the UFL handle, during the week kind of stuff and getting information out there when it's not game day, and how do we deal with off season and kind of getting the news out. But I certainly wouldn't say that there's an overwhelming amount. I don't know. To me, Michigan, if it wasn't such a nostalgic brand, but I don't think you can get tied up in that. I mean, to me, that's on the chopping block as well.
I think it is just because of Ford Field, if nothing else. I mean, I don't know if there's another venue in Detroit that would work, or if you are going to have to move that team. But you're right. And it's sad because they could pull it, but then again, the Pittsburgh Ballers, they were a successful team, and then they got the plug pulled on them but they weren't really in Pittsburgh or ever played there. But there you have to weigh, is it worth what we're putting into it? And I think when you start to look at Michigan, even though they're a good team, UFL has to say, like, this is just not working as a whole.
Last one here, and then we'll do a little expansion talk. Battlehawks, obviously untouchable with that. I mean, there's no point even having a debate about that. The Brahmas are a tough one because the Brahmas have been, we're good in the AAF with the Commanders and everything else, have never really hit those marks. Have done respectable. I know the Easter weekend, right? The first game was like 14,000, and they've gone down from that. But like that's about what Birmingham drew. What are your thoughts? Because to me, Birmingham's kind of a bubble one.
Yeah, I think with San Antonio. Yeah, I think if there's I don't know what the lease agreement is there for them, so I don't know what they're pouring into as far as their stadium. But I think when you start to get the numbers that they've gotten, a bubble team, I think that is a good way to put it. But again, if you're going to move them, or you're going to move venues or whatever, you need an upgrade. And I don't know, what the answer really is for San Antonio there. Do they, especially if they want to continue to keep the Texas thing going? But yeah, I think the San Antonio Commanders averaged like 19 or 20,000 fans for the brief time that they were there. And I think it feels to me like you're right. That community was so burnt, and actually has a really good, alt football history. But I think they were so burnt that, even Wade Phillips might not be able to win them over here as it goes along.
Yeah, so back this was Easter weekend, the first weekend, that Sunday game. 13,000 for the for Easter Sunday, and we had all the and I understand the market sizes are different. I understand that San Antonio has more people than Birmingham, but like, we're just talking about, and again, it's not always apples to apples, because I get all these like, well, how come you're so hard on Birmingham and you're not so hard on? It's like, because Birmingham's been there for 3 years and they played like 70 games in the city, and the people should know that's going on there. Like, because even non-Birmingham, like if you think about that, like, you had 40 UFL games season 1, and then you had another quarter of the games, and another. I can't remember the schedule breakdown of how many protect, but you've had probably 65 USFL, UFL games played at Protective Stadium over the last 3 years. Like, visibility is not an issue there. It's fan interest in that product.
Yeah, and the Stallions are a known brand there. With San Antonio, you sometimes in these markets too, as you've worked in local television, you've got to have an advocate inside some of these stations. Unless you're St. Louis, because that they've got really good relationship with the media there in St. Louis, because St. Louis television and newspaper, radio, whatever, understand that people are interested in the Battlehawks. That's not, there are small groups that are interested in all these cities, but not maybe overall. And I think that's what you really got to work on, is the marketing and some of the media relationships. But it's, you could look at the attendance, with these New York Guardians, and it didn't, we're in the biggest city, but it didn't really work out. So it's still, you're looking at numbers of people who are coming to these games. It doesn't matter how big the community is.
Just to, so to make sure that I'm fair on all this, I'll cut San Antonio. I say they're on the chopping block. You've had 2 seasons there to figure it out. You're not up to the standards anymore. W. Scott Bailey's of the world trying to advocate for you, but it's not working out. I put them on that. So what I'm cutting Houston. I'm cutting the whole USFL. I think everything except Birmingham. I mean, Birmingham, St. Louis, I really would. I appreciated Todd Murko's interview last week on here. Like,
was great. Yeah,
it was good. There really can't be, to me, there can't be that many untouchables besides, let's call it Birmingham, St. Louis, and DC. At the end of the day,
I'll totally agree with that. I think if you've got some bubble teams like San Antonio, I think you give them another year. Houston, pull the plug. You're not losing anything there. Sadly, there's just no value there. And, and to me, with the Panthers, that's got to be relocated or something. I don't think you can continue to trend the way they're trending and stay in there.
All right, so now let's talk relocation here a little bit. We'll try to get this is going long. I hope it's like John Lewis. It's like, how long am I am
I'm
I
on your
signed up for
clock.
all this? I'm pulling up here because I want to get just a map of all this to kind of show, because this is where let's see. Okay, Reddit made this one. Okay, this is good. So now what do we do with these teams? Because I think we need to get some West Coast representation on this.
Yes.
It kills me, and this, I wanted to find the official one, but this demonstrates clearly here where, like, when they show this map of like, where are you cheering the UFL from? And it's we're showing
Right.
like this
Yeah.
area here. So what do we do here? I have some trademarks that the USFL has, right? We've got like the like the Austin Gamblers. We got a lot of Austin. We got the Aviators. Got a lot of Baltimore stuff in here. Where do you want to see them go here? I mean, I think you got to take advantage of Oakland somehow. I don't know how you do that, but to me, that would be a no-brainer. Try to hop in there. The San Diego of it all. You got to get somewhere in California.
I think you have to get somewhere in California, and you got to get somewhere in the Northeast. I think some people have tried to push, like, well, you've got DC. I don't really count. I mean, DC's not really that Northeast. I think you have to get something up there. And you have to have a West Coast presence. You've got your middle America there. You've got all your central time people, but you've got to get somebody. I agree. Like, to me, San Diego is a no-brainer. Now, again, there's so many things about trying to place a team in California. I think a lot of owners would tell you that there are a lot of issues, but Oakland, let's bring back the Invaders. Let's go. Or San Diego, either one, that makes sense. Portland would make sense to me. But if you're going to add two teams, I'm with you. I think you have to add a team in the Northeast and a team out West somewhere in the Pacific time zone.
Yeah. So you have the Oakland Invaders here, and not all. If you go through kind of the trademark listing on here, I put a little bit more stock where the ones where they've registered multiple categories for these, right? So if you're looking at the Oakland, I mean, again, this is easy to do, but just in terms of things that they've gone through the work to kind of do here, a lot of work with Ohio, right? And Mike Mitchell was talking about that was going to be one of the teams. Canton, I think I would just call it Ohio. I don't think you need to call it Canton. Oakland Invaders here, heavy marks on that. I've got the Oklahoma Outlaws here, a lot of heavy marks on that, and then. We go down through the line here. Obviously, we got the Stars and the Maulers, teams that are involved in that.
The gunslingers.
The guys, this is when I was kind of losing track too, kind of going through time here. We're trying to get on the book. I was like, God, where's all this going on? But I don't know. To me, I go through the Tom Merkos of it where. And you had said earlier with the Houston, like, you move Houston. Yeah. Are there going to be some upset fans? I think you need to prioritize being in a market. I think if TV is important as it is, no disrespect to Birmingham, not the biggest TV market in the world, no respect to Memphis. Like, I would almost stay in Michigan just because of you're in Michigan. Like, if nothing else, like, because it's the bigger market in terms of that. Like, I know Houston's high up there as well, but like you said, dumping money in there, that would be where I would prioritize it. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I do like the idea of Ohio and in the whole Canton area. I went up there last summer. It was really fun. But yeah, I think if you have a team in the West and you've got a team in the Northeast, it just kind of feels like it balances everything out. And with in Ohio, it'd be another Midwest team. I guess that could work. But yeah, you've got to color this map in some more. This looks like Mondale versus Reagan here back in the day.
Just as finally around this. So Arizona Outlaws, we got a lot of Arizona on here. A couple different marks for that. Many Austin. I think if you can't make it work in Houston, I don't know if you're going to make it work in Austin. I don't know if the population and everything's there for that. The Baltimore's of it. Do you like the Baltimore Stars?
No.
Or room at the Stars? No.
No, you've got DC there. To me, it doesn't make sense to put two teams that close together in such a small league. To me, that doesn't make sense.
Boston Breakers.
There's your Northeast presence. I could see that.
Just going through here, Canton on that. Here we go. You have a lot of Dallas Stallions. Denver is all. Yeah, you bookmarked this. The Dallas Stallions, the hub of the UFL 2025. Denver Gold. always get a lot of, there was
Yeah.
the Canton Gold. I think that was rumored as well, but that would qualify for me, even though that's not quite filling out the map as much as I would like. Anything in this, and I know that
Right.
sports doesn't exist for a large swath of this, but like, I would be okay with Denver. What would you make of that?
Yeah, and Denver was a pretty popular team back in the original USFL. Now that that was a long time ago, and lots of things have changed. I mean, the only concern is, are you going to be playing in Denver in March or April, and that could that could be a little tough. We've seen you get snowouts out there sometimes in baseball, so that could be a little tough, and it would be, but I think Denver could be in on it, especially if if it could be another city with a very bad NFL team that would maybe say, let's try this gold stuff for a little bit. Oh, your national tuners. I knew this one had to come up here.
Well, I just to round out the conversation, make sure we're touching all these. Like I said, you gotta get out of this portion of the map. Like we gotta. It's hard. It's hard to feel like, again, I've said this a million times. You would never pick these. You would never settle a team on these, a league in these markets under any circumstances except the way that we are at right now.
Well, but wouldn't you feel like Nashville might be a home for relocation rather than expansion?
Yes, that would be fine.
Yeah,
but to me, it's flip flopping when that's deck chairs on the Titanic at that point. I think you need to make it.
Might be right.
I think you need to make a move on that. And I think that's it. I was just trying to make sure we had any other. And again, you can get a lot of these, but at least it just gives us a good jumping off point for all of that. So I don't know. Final thoughts rounding this out here. I've been wild meandering to conversation today. Anything else you want to touch on?
I know we came in with a very structured idea of what we're going to talk about, but it tends to happen. We talk about a lot of different things, which I enjoy. No, I'm continuing to stay optimistic. And like I said before, it was such a clunky rollout and there were so many red flags with this league, the way it rolled out. But then the more I continue to think about it, and maybe I'm just getting soft, is like, okay, they've got it. It's working TV wise. Let's hope that they're learning from their mistakes. They're starting to learn from what I know you have heard 1,000 times, and I have too. You've got to do better local marketing. Let people know these things are happening, and start giving away stuff. I mean, come on. Let's give away some things and get some people in. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I've always said that they need to view. I was like, oh, my dog said. I thought there was another creature on my deck. There needs to be. I would say, if I was involved in the UFL, I would do a deep dive in the offseason of how does the CFL conduct its marketing in the offseason, because the CFL has an extended offseason as well. I mean, they really go dormant for a lot of it. And then how do they ramp up and how do they work with the communities? That's why I thought Todd was great last week, because you're selling tickets to me, and I know there's vast differences. And like I had Sam Schwartzstein texting me like, the arena football is nothing like that. I'm like, we're selling football content here. Like you're trying to get butts in seats. At the end of the day, you're trying to market a niche product. Like I think there's a lot, but yeah, if I was with the UFL, I would do a deep dive into some of these CFL franchises, figure out how do you stay relevant in the off season? How do you market? How do you bring players in? I know the teams are doing more. I get the press releases. They're trying to, it seems like they're not coming in just an hour before the game. They're trying to come in the day before or the morning of and try to do some more stuff. But my fear is, June 17th or whatever, this shuts off, and then we come back in December again. And that's kind of the biggest fear, because I think you're rolling the same plan out next year, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change.
No, and that's not going to work. That's not sustainable. Yeah, you got to sell an experience too. I remember listening to a podcast of a guy who was a general manager of at the time WUSA, which later became the NWSL roundabout. But he said, you can say, yeah, these are the greatest, this is the highest level of soccer, of women's soccer. And, people don't care. You've got to sell an experience. You have to give people an opportunity to come to the game, a reason to come to the game. Whether it's, some pregame stuff, halftime stuff, postgame stuff. And then when they take in the product on the field, they say, oh, that's interesting too. That was fun. This was a whole fun experience. So I'm going to come back. And I hope that we see a little bit more of that as we go along. In St. Louis, I was there. There was a little bit of pregame stuff. It wasn't as big as it was the year before. And there was really nothing happening after the game, but the game's the thing. There was a lot of tailgating going on. That was a lot of fun. And I'm going to be interested. I'm planning to head down to Birmingham for the season finale. So I kind of want to see like what, is there a better experience than what I had before as far as outside the arena? So it'll be fun.
Yeah, I've always said, and I got a lot of flack even going into the XFL last season from people with the league, and like it's never been a question of like the football on the field and the minds behind the football product of it at all. And I mean, even we want to poo-poo on Curtis Johnson and Bob Stoops and stuff, but like overall, the quality of football is, I believe, the highest quality of spring that we've had since the USFL back in the 80s. And like that's not the issue. It's never been the issue. It's kind of all of this other stuff. And I use my own as a videographer. Like I am not at all like the best videographer in the world, right? Like in terms of, vision or talent or whatever. But like, I think I do a really good job, like wrapping what I do into a tangible thing that I think I'm pretty good at marketing it. I think I'm pretty visible about it. I think the customer service aspect of it is pretty good. I mean, we just got back from Vegas, this huge conference that it wasn't even my client. It was one of my, whatever colleagues' clients. And I'm like, there's nothing that we do that's like 1,000 other people could come do this, right? The quality of but it's everything else that's involved in that. And it's, you're responsive and we show up and you look professional and you market and you're in these places. The quality of the football isn't the issue here, but that's also, that doesn't, when you're flipping through your guide on the, Saturday morning, it doesn't say UFL, like the best spring football that's ever existed. Like you need to know everything else about it. It doesn't matter what's on the field if people aren't turning on the TV.
Which I wish they would bring back the United by Football or some kind of pregame show for these things to tell those stories, because there's 1,000 great stories in this league.
Well, I think, I mean, you could even do that through podcasting right now for free, but they don't seem too interested in doing that.
What an idea, Reed. What a great idea. Just make some guys available and we'll talk to them about their story.
I've given up. It's been so busy, but I've really just kind of given up sending my Monday email. So, John Lewis, if you want a little more detailed, shorter conversation, John Lewis's channel is probably the way to go. If you want long, meandering, rambling thoughts, this is probably the place to go. John, anything else you're working on?
No, just, I try to do about a video a week or so, just trying to talk about the league and some stories and things like that. So, but I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to be on here. And yes, a lot of my videos are usually less than 20 minutes. Sometimes they're about 5 to 10. So it's fun to talk over an hour about some UFL. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm about out the game. I'm just going to start uploading the games to YouTube and just call it a day. I think I'm getting out of this. But I appreciate you guys comment. Anything you have any thoughts on this, anything we've talked about. Like I said, a little more speculation today, but always fun. Wanted to touch on that. So we'll appreciate it. And I think we got some CFL content. Hopefully, fingers crossed here, coming up after the break. Well, I haven't seen this great face since I think our CFL Grey Cup show in where the heck were we? Hamilton, back in Hamilton. Here we have Dan Ralph, Canadian Press here. Dan, how are you doing? It's almost June.
It can't come too soon. Thank you. Always great to catch up.
Do you mean in terms of excitement for football, or in terms of weather, or in terms of
both? I mean, we can't complain about the winter we had. We had very little snow by Southern Ontario proportions, but I can't wait. Summer and fall are my two favorite times of year. So bring it on. Let's go.
Well, we're getting in, and we'll talk, the Chad Kellys of it all here and everything else, Argos, and I want to talk maybe a little Edmonton, but this Shawn Lemon thing, and we were tracking that, last week coming out, and then the news that, he's at training camp and the CFLPA, kind of all that. Walk us through that, because this took a lot of us here in the stateside kind of by surprise.
Well, us too, excuse me, only because he retired. Then came the league, discipline, and they made it sound like it was pretty emphatic, But then, as is the case with any suspension, the player can appeal, and the CFLPA can launch an appeal or a grievance on the player's behalf. And while that process is going through to fruition, the player is allowed to resume practicing and ultimately playing with the team until an arbitrator renders his decision. So I thought when the whole thing was kind of bizarre. I mean, he re-signed with the Alouettes after the Grey Cup, then he retired, and then came the discipline. And then Tuesday, Tuesday morning, he was at practice. And so I think, like I said, where the PA is going to come from on this is he was suspended for allegedly betting on CFL games in 2021 when he was with Calgary. And on one occasion, he also is allegedly to have wagered on games that he was involved in. Sports betting didn't become legal in Ontario, and Ontario is the only province in Canada until 2022. And so I think where the PA is going to come from on this is how can you have a policy in place in 2021 when it wasn't legal to bet in Ontario, for example? So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he came back because it was on again, off again. Now it's on again. But we'll see. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any ideas how long this could take. And so, he'll get into maybe an exhibition game or two, or maybe he'll start the season. We don't know.
It just surprises me because, like you said, you thought he was walking away. He was retiring here, and you go out and you with Grey Cup, kind of all that stuff. Like, I just don't understand here and now to be embroiled in all of this. I know he's a player that's been in the league a long time, because various players, you might go to the CFL and then, all right, whatever, I'm walking away. But to someone to be in it so long, and then, I mean, does this mar his legacy now? We had Daryl Davis on a couple of weeks ago when it kind of first came out, and he looked at it way less severe than maybe an Andrew Harris issue where you're cheating on the game, and all of that. But just what does this do to kind of his legacy here? Because it just seems kind of messy right now.
Yeah, it seems messy. I mean, I guess it all depends what the arbitrator decides, and, excuse me, and what the arbitrator finds. If the arbitrator finds evidence that he did do this and adheres to the suspension or gives it, let's say, 9 games for argument's sake, then I think we can sort of say that it's tarnished a bit. But right now, I don't think it has done anything, only because we don't really know exactly. I mean, there's allegations of what he did, but until the arbitrator does a deep dive and takes a look and we find out exactly what he did, you know what? It's very, very bizarre because sports betting and betting on your own game, I mean, there's a whole integrity issue. I mean, we went through this years and years and years ago with Pete Rose, right? And decades later, Pete Rose is still not in the Baseball Hall of Fame because of it. So, I mean, it's a serious matter. I get it, but it happened, I don't know, maybe we're naive here because it's not like there's allegations that he threw a game or that he bet on himself or he somehow intentionally marred the integrity of the game. We don't know that. And if the arbitrator comes through and says that the policy is not very strong and that Mr. Lemon did not do anything untoward, then I think he should be allowed to play based on that. Now, depending on what the arbitrator finds, if the arbitrator finds something else more damning, then I guess we have to revisit the subject at that time.
Because it's less, and there's a fire ambulance or something going by here. It's less as severe than the Toronto Raptors, right, where the guy was betting on games and the parlays and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get to the Argos here. I mean, is this a Shawn Lemon issue? Is this an Alouettes thing at all? Because I know the Argos have got their own PR and kind of everything, but because obviously the Alouettes, they want the focus of the offseason now to be, hey, we're running it back and kind of all that stuff. Like, is this affecting them? Kind of what's the media landscape of that, or is this just a Shawn Lemon issue?
You know what? I know yesterday it caused a bit of a stir at training camp just because of the obvious, right? Yeah. You come there and you see number 0 on the field and you go, wait a minute, I thought he was suspended. Like I said, I can only speak for me. I would look at, let's wait and see what the arbitrator finds out and go from there. Like I said, I don't partake in sports betting, so I'm probably very naive in terms of asking whether this is big or not. I mean, I think it's a big deal. I mean, the integrity of the game comes into play, definitely. But, like I said, someone much more succinct than I is going to take a deep dive into this. And then hopefully those findings come public. And, when the arbitrator renders his decision one way or the other, we'll have a much clearer picture.
Yeah, I am emotionally invested enough in all this sports stuff. I couldn't imagine betting on any of this stuff and having be more upset. We were gonna do this last week, and then my work schedule and stuff, but now we got more with this Chad Kelly issue and everything. Like, catch us up to speed here, because it really sounds like a mess and just a lot of PR kind of nightmare for the Argos and Chad and everything else.
Yeah, it is. There was a lot of fallout Thursday when we showed up at rookie camp. We were told that Mike Clemens was going to speak on the suspension 2 days prior of Chad, and for the gender-based violence policy violations. And so there was, I mean, by Argo standard, a very good contingent of media there. And I got there a couple hours early and during the workout, and I wasn't even at the stadium 10 seconds when another reporter said, "Can you believe it?" And I went, "Believe what?" And I took a look on the field, and it's like, holy smokes, really? Now, I know technically he was allowed to be on the field, and I know he wasn't participating in practice. He wasn't practicing. He was just on the field. But the PR ramifications of that it was mind-boggling. I don't know who thought that would be a good idea for the Argos, for Chad Kelly, and for the CFL in general, because we'll get into the reasons why, but the reasons why are very, very serious and very, very significant. And to have him on the field as if, well, I don't want to say nothing happened, but have him on the field, to me was very, very, it was a PR nightmare, and it created the fallout that you would expect it to create, to the point where on Sunday when they opened camp, they made it clear that Chad Kelly was not going to be involved in team-related activities, and to the best of my knowledge, that remains the case moving forward.
I've seen now, like, he's going to be transferred to the suspended list, or there's kind of some.
He was transferred this morning, but that's procedural too. I mean, anytime a player is not with the team for team activities, a matter of procedure is to put him on the suspended list. It's not. I mean, if you look at it the first time, you might look and go, "Oh my gosh, the Argos have suspended Chad Kelly." Well, not really. They've done a procedural move to put him on the suspended list.
I wanted to talk about this twofold, from the football side as well, but just from kind of, the Argos, and we've chronicled this for a long time on the show, and I mean, even longer than that, but with the media there, and with getting a foothold and all of this, and here we're finally, we do the Grey Cup 2 years ago, and then we make it again, and all this stuff, and like, what is this? I mean, is this? Do you think this will blow over as season rolls on? Because obviously Chad's going to be out for a while pending all of this stuff, but what does it do just kind of for them in the landscape there?
Ooh, it's a really good question. Part of me wants to think that if he complies with conditions of the suspension and goes through all of this rehab or all of this education process that the league has put forth to him, and comes back and they feel that he's completed terms of the suspension, then I think the CFL will welcome him back and reinstate him. I think that's the better word. And then Toronto's got a decision to make, right? And that's the whole thing through this process. And that's what GM Mike Clemens said last week. Like, even if Chad and his camp appeal the suspension and theoretically is able to come back to resume practicing and play, the Argos will reserve the right to decide at that time whether to bring him back or whether to give their own secondary punishment or on this matter. So they've taken the attitude they're going to take a wait and see, and they're going to see how this plays out. And I think that's probably the way they're going to do it. And I'm like I said, I'm of two minds. This is a very serious situation for him. And can he come back? I guess, kind of, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finds it difficult to come back. just because of the severity of the situation. But then the other part of me is saying, if he comes back and they're 2-7, 1-8, and he comes back and all of a sudden they win 2-3 games, then maybe to some that they'll put that in the back of their mind and think, okay, he's back playing good football, the team's winning, everything's all good. I'm not so sure. I just think the severity of why we are where we are is pretty damning. And the Argos are really walking a PR tightrope here regarding how they handle this and what happens moving forward. And I guess we'll have to see. I'm just, like I said, I would have kind of liked to go to rookie camp last week and just concentrate on Mike Clemens and then understand. I just took it for granted that he was not going to be at rookie camp and he was not going to be at training camp until, and was not going to be with the team until he complied with conditions of the suspension. Bringing him back and telling us that, it doesn't violate conditions of his discipline. I thought, whoa, I'm not sure I would have done that.
One last question about Chad, and then I want to talk the football side of it, because it's hard where someone's had kind of things in the past, right? Where I don't know if Jeremiah Mazzoli, for example, gets accused. I just think where there was, history of kind of other behavior in the past, where it's just more of a spotlight here on that, where maybe you would, I don't know if Chad's not getting the benefit of the doubt, and I don't really have a, side one way or another where I stand, but it is hard where you're someone that's had things in the past and now you have this and now it's like, oh, well, see, there you go. We were just waiting for him to screw up and now we finally screwed up. It's kind of what it seems like, and not that people were wanting to see Chad fail, but it feels like, oh, see, there you go. We knew all along something was going to happen. Yeah.
It's funny though. I mean, up until everything that happened in November and in the off season, I'll be honest with you, Reed, he really made me personally believe that he had turned a corner and that he had matured and that he had grasped the understanding that this was a new opportunity for him, and it was an opportunity for him to continue playing football with a new team in a new city in a new league and to start fresh. And I mean, in training camp, when he was going through the process of being the starter, I remember asking him about his past and what have you, and he always owned up to it. And when we talked about, whether there was, vindication on his part because of his past, I mean, he was very adamant. He said, "Well, you didn't think I could do it?" And I told him point blank. I said, "You know what? I was willing to give you the benefit of the doubt." But I told him I didn't, there was some trepidation there, and he accepted that. He embraced it, and everything he did during the course of the season, he looked like he had embraced being the face of a franchise. Then this came, right, and it's unfortunate because, like I said, we're all very well aware of his past. He has made questionable decisions in the past, but the guy is 29. He was approaching 30, and I just thought he embraced the fact that this was one last opportunity to play football. It was close to home, and all those things, and that he had embraced it. And unfortunately, we are where we are.
And making pretty good money,
Well, that doesn't hurt either. But now all of a sudden that opportunity is hanging in the balance too. So
football here, the Argos, right? They got Cameron Dukes up there, Brian Scott, friend of the show, and he has kind of been the way down the depth chart there. But kind of what do they do? Is this season gone? Is it 9 games? Half the season. What do you think from a football standpoint?
Well, if you bring in right now, nobody's cut any veteran quarterbacks, or they have, all the guys who have a CFL pedigree are still in camp or have retired. So I think you're almost obligated to go with what you got, because at least Dukes and I'm having a brain cramp.
Brian Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah.
At least they know the system. They know the coaches. They know, when Ryan Dinwiddie makes a call, these two guys at least can comprehend it immediately and know what to do. You bring in a new guy now, and there's a crash course involved. CFL training camps are very, very short, a couple weeks, and you don't give you a whole lot of time to cram. So I think they're going to stick with what they have, and we'll see both those guys play in the exhibition season. And I mean, Duke's made 2 starts last year and was the short yardage quarterback, and showed glimpses. Now we'll see. Can he be the bona fide starter? The jury's out. But I mean, and that's not a slight against him. That's just Chad started 16 of 18 games last year, and was, the outstanding player for a reason. So.
I mean, there's just a lot of talent there. You would just not like to waste kind of this opportunity right now. It just feels, I mean, Chad's playing, right? This is their window still. And, and now to think you flip it like that, you would never think that we're not going to have our starting quarterback like that, non-injury related for half the season. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty big blow there. How do you think, have you gotten a sense of how Coach Dinwiddie and everybody's handling it? I know Pinball did his media. I mean, have you guys gotten any of that sense yet?
I have not had a chance to talk to Ryan. As I said to you, I'm going to Guelph tomorrow, and we'll have my first opportunity to speak with Ryan on and off the record, just to see how he's doing and what they're doing and how he's grasping it. But I mean, the guy's had a pretty good run up to now. I mean, 3 years at the on the job, and they've finished first all 3 years and won a Grey Cup in 2022. So. He's obviously a very good coach. And I look at that offense. The offensive line is coming back intact. The receiving core is maybe minus Curly Gittins Jr., who was traded to Edmonton. But Curly was hurt much of last year too. So a lot of those guys are coming back. There's a lot of familiarity on offense. AJ Ouellette's gone, but Kadeem Carey has shown when healthy he can be a pretty good running back. And Daniel Adebaboye, I'm proud of myself for even pronouncing it, has shown that he can step up, and he probably may get a more increased role in 2024 as well. So offensively, I think they're in decent shape. You just want your quarterback, don't shoot us in the foot. Just basically what they had told Chad, would take whatever's there and live to play the next down. And I think Cameron Dukes and
Brian Scott.
Thank you. And Brian will have that analogy because they're young quarterbacks, right? And they probably don't have that same mentality that Chad does, that I can make this happen. Whereas these guys are going to look and go, okay, it's there. I can do it that way.
Yeah, I'll just because a side note, I'll never forget Brian and winning the spring league. What would that have been? The 2021 championship. During COVID, they flew him into. I think they had to do it in Orlando because everything got shut down, and having him call in from the hotel room the next day. It was very exciting stuff back in early Markcast war. Last things here, so the East, we got the Alouettes here running back and everything, and Toronto. In the West, am I wrong in thinking that Edmonton is the most interesting kind of the watch here? I don't understand the Trey Ford. Not okay. We're bringing in McLeod, paying him a bucket of money. Do you agree with that, or what do you think on the West?
Well, to me, the West is intrigue top to bottom. You've got the Elks making the big pitch for McLeod. But it is only for this year, so let's keep that in mind. But also, you mentioned Trey Ford. I kind of thought last year he earned the right to at least start the year as the starter, and he's in the last year of his rookie deal. So, the timing is interesting. But I mean, to me, there's no doubt that McLeod's. How do I say this nicely? Because I love Trey Ford, but I think McLeod brings more experience, more veteran savvy, and a championship pedigree, having won 2 of these. And he's played a ton of football throughout his pro career. So I get it. I understand it. My concern is that you've got what sort of impact do you make on Trey and his development by telling him this year that, you're going to watch. And in talking to Trey this offseason, he says all the right things. but you can tell just as the competitor in him that he's disappointed. But the other intriguing thing to me is you got BC hosting the Grey Cup this year. There's a big push for them to get to the game. You've got the Calgary Stampeders. They had their first losing season in a while last year. They're in the playoffs last year for the 18th straight year. Can they keep it going? And there's a lot of questions about Jake Meyer and his time there. And Matt Schultz is the backup in Calgary, and he played well when given the opportunity in Hamilton last year too. And Saskatchewan has Trevor Harris back healthy, new head coach, and a bunch of new faces in free agency. And then you've got Winnipeg being Winnipeg, going after a 5th straight Grey Cup. So to me, there's a lot of intrigue in the West. And but yeah, my interest is in Edmonton to see what happens, because they haven't made the playoffs since 2019, and they've only won something like 11 games since then. So, and Chris Jones, I got to believe, as the coach and GM, is under the microscope this year. This is year 3, and they've been 4-14 in each of the last 2. So it's time to fish or cut bait.
Yeah, there's got to be some sort of just salt, or was it oil and vinegar or oil and water between Trey Ford and Chris Jones. There's just got to be, because when he plays and you see it on the field, and I don't understand why you don't do with the Trey Ford thing like BC did with the Nathan Rourke when they had him for cheap, and let's bring in. It's like, well, no, now we're going to pay McLeod a boatload of money, and then we got to take advantage while you can. I mean, BC was incredible that year. I mean, A, Rourke was awesome, but B, we could sign every single person we wanted around him because we were paying them a nickel and a half, right?
Yeah, exactly. To me, I think Trey showed last year he can be a very good quarterback. Maybe you could have made some investments on the defensive side to give him some support, or maybe brought in another receiver. I mean, they do have Eugene Lewis as the top receiver. So I mean, there's no doubt there, and they have Brown as the running back. So it's interesting. I guess the CFL is a quarterback driven league, however. So if basically you're telling McLeod, we're expecting you to stay on the field and put points on the board, and keep our defense fresh and keep them off the field. So maybe it's but I will say this too, Reed, that Chris Jones has won a lot more Grey Cups than I ever have. So I'll defer to him. But if it doesn't work, I'll be the first to tell him.
Well, but yeah, I mean, but you get that with like the Bill Belichick's here, where I mean, you can have success for a long time. If I'm Trey Ford, I demand a trade to the Argonauts or something. I mean, wouldn't that be spicy?
I tell you, I think he would have looked good in my mind in Hamilton, because he's from nearby Niagara Falls. But they've got their quarterback of the future in Taylor Powell, who showed a lot to me last year as a rookie, starting 9 games. So I get that, but you know what? He would look good anywhere in Southern Ontario. That's for darn sure. You're right.
Last question then. So, because Bo, right, showing up in a boot, they say it's fine. You really are high on Taylor Powell there. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, I was there on Monday when Bo took to the field. He participated. He was in pads. He participated in 30 or 40 plays. Granted, they were skelly. 6 receivers against 7 defensive players, and he didn't run, but he threw the ball well. He made some very nice passes, and afterwards declared himself fit and ready, and that he's no doubt in his mind that he's going to play in the season opener in Calgary, which is a homecoming for him, given that he started his career with the Stamps. So, but I don't think it was a coincidence that on Sunday they signed Powell to an extension, keeping him under contract till 2025. So, you know what? You can't have. I mean, they'll tell you anything in the CFL that can't have more. You got to have more than one quarterback to make a run of it. And but yeah, those they're pretty solid there with those two in my mind. But as far as Bo, we'll see, right? We got 2 weeks to see how much he plays in the exhibition games and see how he feels. There were a couple times he walked to the line, or he walked to take the snap. He looked like he was a little ginger with his right leg, but we'll see.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate making the time today, taking time. Good luck tomorrow at training camp and all that stuff, and hopefully we'll get you back on here. And I'm getting my Rolodex here, working, trying to remember who's on what team and everything. We're getting back into it. It's been UFL here, and now we're getting back in. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Huge special thanks to Dan and John Lewis for coming on today. Really appreciate that. Like I said, Dan working with my crazy work schedule and him and covering the Argos training and the Tiger Cats and kind of all of that stuff. Dan's incredibly busy. Always just a huge wealth of knowledge, a Hall of Fame reporter like he is coming on the show. And then John Lewis, as always, go check out John's channel. Like I said, during the interview, not quite as, this extensive hour-long discussion. John does a little bit more bite-sized, and so I think that it's, both sides of the coin. I think it's all good. Like and subscribe if you enjoy all this and get us to 3,500 subscribers. Hope this wasn't too not football today, but I thought it was fun. We'll see you next time. Thanks.